I recognize the member from Fredericton, York.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm pleased to rise today to speak on motion 21, and I want to thank my colleagues on this side of the House who have and will speak to this motion, along with my colleague and seatmate from St. John Lancaster, who seconded the motion with me. I'm not sure why the Minister has taken the tone that he has today. I would remind the Minister that at one time here in Fredericton it was an offence to take your horse across the bridge any faster than a walk. But regulations change and should change over time. Based on the conditions of the day and the best science and engineering that exists, and that's why we're discussing this motion today, is because a deficiency has been identified in the entire mechanism of how these decisions are made. And we're trying to initiate a discussion as to how they may be improved upon. And the Minister would have this House believe that there's no difference between the last motion that pertained to quarries and this motion. There is a difference, Madam Speaker. The first motion dealt primarily with a specific quarry number 3, as I refer to it, the quarry that now, as the Minister has indicated, that decision is before the courts. This motion has, I would argue, a more provincial scope, and talks about what should be done going forward to make sure that the citizenry of New Brunswick is properly consulted, and that the issues that have been identified through the deficiencies in the process as it currently exists be considered and looked at with an eye to improving what currently exists. Now, my colleague from Sunbury County has gone through the motion. I won't do that again. I will acknowledge the role that the local service districts have played in advancing this file and bringing to light some of the issues associated with the quarries, in particular the Estes Bridge Local Service District. And in order to gain an understanding of the challenges that exist on this particular file, we first have to understand what the local service districts of Douglas and Estes Bridge look like. And envision, if you would, Madam Speaker, a pie-shaped tract of land that is wide in its northernmost regions and tapers right into a fine point as it approaches the Fredericton city limits. And we're dealing with the thin wedge of the pie-shaped local service district in both Estes Bridge and in Douglas. And part of the confusion that has existed around this file is the fact that while the quarries that are quarry number 2, which is the Myra quarry, and quarry number 3, which is the proposed Spring Hill quarry, while they physically sit in the local service district of Douglas, the resource roads that people are using that the companies are using to extract the resource physically sit in the local service district of Estes Bridge. And therein lies the problem. The mechanism as it currently existed required the Douglas Local Service District to be consulted, but not the Local Service District of Estes Bridge, even though many of the issues such as water runoff and noise and quality of life and sight distances as it pertains to a major road and all the other aspects associated with the operation of a quarry are because of geography, because of the lay of the land in the area, are Estes Bridge issues. And yet the meeting that took place to undertake the consultation process was in the Douglas Local Service District and not the Estes Bridge Local Service District. So the two communities are very close together. The two local service districts are very close together, but because of this confusion, because of this misstep in the very beginning stages, it has caused some heartache and sorrow along the way. And so what we're proposing is to begin a discussion that would address that so it doesn't happen going forward, because there are other examples that I'm aware of here in the Capital Region where the activity physically sets in one one local service district, but the greatest impact is in the next local service district over. And so that's the reason for this motion to begin with. Now, if we go to the second whereas clause and we look at the quarry proximity to residential areas and the current excavation protocols, and I was at a meeting where the residents of the local service district had asked their local service district representatives to bring the Department of Environment and Local Government in so that they could ask questions of the department directly. And the department, and I was in the room, and others can confirm the statements that were made, but they said that it was up to the residents of the local service district to undertake the enforcement activity. So it was up to the residents of the local area to monitor the site and what was being done, and when they believed an infraction had taken place, they had to call the Department of Environment and Local Government, and Environment and Local Government may or may not come out to address the issue. And they talked about the need to take pictures and have landmarks in the pictures and try to have the pictures time dated so that they could be used as enforcement tools. So they were asking the local residents to do all of the enforcement. That is another challenge with the process as it currently exists. And like I said, there are 3 quarries in the area. I think the residents of the area understand that these resources are needed for development in the area. But 3 quarries in 2 existing and 1 proposed in that small a geographic area does present some challenges, because you're having 3 quarries spring up in a residential area. So again, when we look at development that's taking place, perhaps we should cast a slightly wider net in terms of who we're going to consult with and what the makeup, what the composition of the area actually looks like. So the minister talked about differentiation between gravel pits and rock quarries, and there isn't as much differentiation as he may think. You can get zoning permits for a gravel pit and then have that revert into or transform into a rock quarry over time. And therein presents another challenge, because the environmental footprint is very, very different between gravel and sand extraction. You're using an excavator, you've got a few trucks in there, versus a rock quarry where you have blasting and everything that goes along with that. So what are we actually asking for? And that can be answered in the 2 be it resolved clauses. So we're asking that environment and local government revisit its legislation and regulation pertaining to rock quarries and develop an assessment tool that better addresses the various factors that are impacted, namely waterways, runoff, noise, air quality, sight distance from provincial roads, and continued quality of life for existing residents. So right now, there really are not any provisions to govern runoff around quarry number 2, and the residents have been told that the responsibility for enforcement rests with them. The noise and air quality issues, the geology of an area, the topography of an area have to be taken into consideration, because you have much of the quarry activity taking place on one side of the valley, and much of the residential activity, not all, but much of the residential activity taking place on the other side of the valley. And so when that activity is taking place, that blasting is taking place, the noise associated with the resource extraction is taking place, that noise carries across the valley, and in some cases people would even suggest amplifies a bit in the process. So when we're looking at where we're going to establish gravel pits and rock quarries and their proximity to residential areas, perhaps the topography of the region should also be a consideration in the mix. So yes, I know that there's regulations in place right now, Madam Speaker, just as the Minister has said, but what we're saying respectfully is that we have identified through first-hand experience some problems associated with the regulation and legislation as it currently exists. And this motion is trying to fix it, not just for the Estes Bridge region, but we would argue that these are factors that should be considered province-wide. So in the second whereas clause, review its allowable quarry proximity to existing residential area regulation with the intent of increasing the catchment area with which Department of Environment and local government, regional service commissions, and quarry developers are required to consult, and that the minimum proximity to quarry regulation and/or legislation has its minimum distances expanded. So that, in a nutshell, when you ask what are we trying to accomplish, that, in a nutshell, is what we are trying to accomplish. We are saying that there are problems at the present time with the proximity that quarries can allowably operate beside residential areas, and a practice has been to go and buy up that 600 meter area around the resource development site, the resource extraction site, and then you don't have to consult at all. Well, there's a quality of life issue associated with the residents in that area. Again, they're not across the board against an operation like this establishing itself, but they want to have meaningful input into the rules that govern that company. There was blasting that took place on Christmas Eve. Now, and that blast, by the way, exceeded allowable government regulations. So what do you do when a blast takes place on Christmas Eve? The civil service has left for Christmas to be with their families, and understandably so. But would it not be prudent for the company to wait to a slightly different time when perhaps more monitoring could take place? That's all we're asking. There's a long lineup of trucks that start forming early in the morning. We're not against those trucks. They have to have an ability to generate income as well. But could there be some discussion around the time in the morning that they start lining up? These are all things and many more that we're asking in this motion. And with that, I'll sit down. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
La parole est à l'honorable ministre de la Justice et de la Sécurité publique.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Madame la Présidente, ça me fait plaisir d'avoir l'occasion de prendre la parole sur cette motion